Good morning, our audience. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today. Welcome to Business Continuity Management Planning. In collaboration with Amit University Online, we are honored to have two expert speakers with us. We have a Dr. Sonail Kumar, the professor, operations professional expert and corporate trainer in the field of food technology. Also, we have Dr. Harshita Singh, the expert and corporate trainer industrial development analysis. Welcome, Dr. Sonail, with us today, and thank you so much for giving us this time.
Thank you.
I will leave the floor for you to talk to us about business continuity management planning.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving such a brief and nice introduction to us. I welcome you all, dear participant. Welcome to the session, the webinar, which is much awaited, we were eagerly waiting to meet you, to interact you on the topic business continuity management planning. So, what makes it important? What makes it critical? What makes it the need of the hour, need of the era, need of the century? Now, on this discussion pointers, I, Dr. Sunil Kumar, along with my co-professor, Dr. Harshita Singh, will be taking you to a short, comprehensive journey on the business continuity management planning. Let's look into a quick agenda, what we are going to talk and what we are going to get and take away from this particular session. We will be talking and discussing about the meaning and introduction of the business continuity management planning. What are the challenges which is faced by the organization, which leads to the emerging need and the requirement of business continuity management planning? What are the key components of the continuity planning which we can incorporate, which is there, which makes it stronger, which makes it more feasible for the long-term sustainability and insights on the business continuity management planning process, how we are going to implement, what are the key aspect which we need to take care for the implementation, and then what are the best practices which we should implement, which we should do, or which we can do it, or which might be we are doing. So let's look into that and talk on those parameters, and then we will follow with the case discussion, the company specific situation and the scenario, who who have implemented this particular concept and able to sustain in the market, in the business, even after a lot of the difficulty, and who were not able to do, and will try to identify and locate why they're not able to do it. So my very first common question is, what is common sense, and why that common sense is not common, as a lot of the saying we have heard a lot of time that common sense is not common, but it is still there. So while connecting that common sense with my business continuity management planning, why I'm bringing that common sense over here? Because if you look at these four words, business, management, and planning, and then continuity. So business, yes, we are doing the business. We are here to do the business. And to run that business, we have that management, that team to work on it. And then we are doing effective planning to execute that particular business. But makes it critical is the continuity, how long we run our business. So the continuity, when we talk about it, at the start, at the inception of my business, it has a different opinion. It has a different meaning. While I've been running that business, it has a different meaning. It has a different opinion. And when there's a disruption, when there's a problem, when there's a constraint which comes, when there's a difficult scenarios, and then when we talk about the continuity, when we talk about the execution, the planning to implement and execute for long-term development and sustainability, it has a different orientation. So are we working on the planning to continue the business now? Is it something which is coming these days only? No, we are doing this from ages. We are doing this for a long time in the past, when lot many organizations is doing it, but with their understanding. But many organizations which has failed to do is, and we have seen that situation during the COVID-19 and the post-COVID-19, because that was the one of the situation when the things has emerged, that has shown the requirement and need of the continuity planning. So what we require with this continuity planning is the structured common sense to run, to continue my business even after a difficult scenario, even after any kind of disruption which comes in, maybe small, maybe a large, maybe of medium scale. But we need to be prepared, we need to be active, we need to be ready for restarting our business, to execute our plan, right? So when we're talking about those challenges, when we're talking about those challenges which is coming into a certain situation, so what are those situations which brings those disruptions? So when we need to implement these continuity planning, are we need to implement these continuity planning only during the problem, when there's a difficult situation? No, it is during those scenarios, but after that also, how we are implementing, how well we are prepared to handle those situations. Are we equipped? Are we ready? Are we prepared? If yes, then we will do it. But again, how we are going to do this? What makes it important? That means it will mitigate my risk. It will remove the intensity of that risk, which will impact my overall business, which will impact my operational parameters, activities. So what we require? We require to maintain the resilience that we can do with the business continuity management planning. Now, in what situation? There are a lot of difficult situations which is there. The most commons are the natural disaster, war, cyber attack in the era of the IT, in the IT industry, how it is coming across, how we are using the robotics AI. And then we have seen the situation of pandemics. What happens when the pandemic is sustaining for a very long duration? So to come across, to overcome these scenarios, these positions, we need to implement business continuity management planning. Now let's quickly talk about what are these risks. Let's look into one of the study which has been done by WEF in 2023, the last year's assessment of the risk, and where they have observed what kind of impact they have made. These risks, which factor of those risks which have made highest influence on the larger population, respondents, as well as the business prospect. So the largest is the energy supply crisis, and the smallest what we have observed is the structural failure in health system. At the same time, there are many more, which has larger influence in making a relationship in terms of impact on the business, the share, as well as the number of respondents it makes it. But there are some other critical risks which are not being presented in this particular chart. So let's look into the few other those risks which makes it influence. So they are the various other list of those impact, those risks which an organization come across, and their readiness, how the company and organization are prepared for that. So that has been presented on the bar charts with their intensity, with their preparedness, and their responses. So out of all these, let's talk about few of the example, few of those risks. Number one is, let's talk about the very recent one, that is the COVID-19, that is the pandemic. How that COVID-19 has brought us to a position, to a situation where we have thought about, yes, we need something structured, solid in place to execute our plan, our mechanism, so that our operation will continue with the minimum damage. And that COVID-19 has shown us certain impacts. Why? Because that COVID-19 started from 2019. It was there in 2020. It was there in 2021. And some impact has been seen in 2022 as well. But people might think it is over. But at the same time, not all organizations were able to come over it. Lot of organization has gone down. Lot of organization has come stronger because they have this in place. They have this in their plan, their strategy. And why that was making such an impact? Because at that time there was no clarity on the resolution. We are not prepared for it. So it triggered the whole entire ecosystem, not only the people, but the business, the organization, nation, policies, and everything. So we need to be prepared for those situations. And one of the key example, if you look at ICMR, how strongly they come up, how strongly they come up with the vaccines, two vaccines they have produced. Further, from there we came up with some positives also. It was not only things which is negative, but there is something positive also. The first and foremost is the realization by all. I'm sure you would agree to this, that every one of you, me, my any systems CEO, any prime minister, president, everyone has realized the need and the preparedness for such situations. Every prime minister, every top leaders has asked their business entities to make a system so that they can be least impacted. So there's a permanent mindset change. We are now ready to accept that situation. Okay, that will come some way or other way, now or then. Now, if you look at one of the most positive side of these COVID-19 is the online education, which has gone to a different level, because the education sector has come up with a strategy. They have prepared themselves with a continuity plan. And now if you look at the online, now we how we are now comfortably and strongly connecting with each other, interacting with each other, learning on this particular continuity planning. So the next most common challenge is the cyber attacks, because we are working in the era of IT. We are now focusing on AI. Now, some day or other day, you will find in the newspaper, on the web portal, on the various platforms, lot of news which is there for the cyber attack, which is now very common, very common. We need to ensure that these cyber attacks should not hamper our business, should not hamper our data, should not hamper our information, because this is the era of information. This is the time for information to be protected. So we need to look forward to fight with this virtual war of the cyber attack, and that can we can do better when we have this business continuity management planning in place. Right? Now, why that makes it further more important? Because because these cyber professionals who are attacking, they are unknown enemy to you, to me, and to the whole world. We don't know who they are, because they have only one objective. What is that objective? You can think on your mind. And I'm sure that first thing what comes in your mind is to damage any particular system. With that objective, they work on. But what we need to do as a person, as an organization, as an individual, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to focus on getting better and better and better than them. But you know the law of the nature. When someone tries a lot of time, sometime they may succeed. We have seen that situations. So what we need to do, we need to prepare our action in such a way that we can restart faster. We can identify them quickly so that we can restart with a minimum loss. Because once it has been attacked, there will be certain loss for sure. But what we need to do, we need to prepare ourselves to be act quickly with the minimum loss, with the minimum effect. And so, how we can do that? How we can keep ourselves updated? How we can keep ourselves in place? Have you ever thought of the 6R? What 6Rs are? Reduce, respond, recover, resume, restore, and return. Have you ever practiced any one of them? Are you implementing any of these? If yes, to what extent you need to think? And you can let me know also. As well as, when was the last time you got succeeded with that? So that reduce means reduce the impact. respond to that impact, recover your business with a minimum loss, resume your business processes, operations, restore your position in the market, and return to the task which you are assigned. That means generate a profitability, do the business sustainability. Are we doing this? Are we practicing this? So this is a very important question. If we are not doing, we should start thinking on this direction. We should start looking on these 6R and how that is making our operation convenient, or making our operation convenient. So to work with these two risks or many other risks, we have just quoted two. Now you can take more examples on that direction. We have seen the earthquake in Japan. We have seen the floods in various countries. We have seen the fire, how they're coming. We have seen the situation of wars. So how the organization are prepared themselves to handle that scenario. Because not every organization is able to come up stronger and with the same intensity. What we need to do, we need to look at the certain components which are most critical in this business continuity management planning. Number one, assess the risk, assess the business impact analysis. That means identify all the possible risks, what are the possible threats, and what level of impact they can make. We need to categorize, we need to assess, we need to identify. Then we need to plan it for that. We need to develop the strategies that we're using business continuity planning. We need to identify that if one location get impacted, do we have plan B? Can we shift our business? Can we shift our operation? Maybe a small scale for a shorter time. So what is the alternative which we have? And who were the key responsible person who will take care of those shiftings, those alternative identification, who will work on those crisis situations. So we need to also work on the crisis management. That means the people or the process which is more structured. I'm sure you must be using this crisis management in your organization, where there's a structured process for the decision making, especially for those emergency situations. The what to communicate, the protocol, the stakeholder, they should be aware of it and coordinate with the all authorities and agencies and make them prepared and ready that how quickly we are going to respond. Practice. So last but not the least is the incident response. That means when we are talking about the stakeholders, internal or external stakeholder, authorities and agencies of coordinating, we need to have that active response team who will immediately act on those procedure emergency SOPs which has been defined. So they will deploy the action plan and they will try to minimize the impact. Further, using these components, the major component what we had just discussed, how we need to bring that in the process. Now, we talked about the risk assessment, we talked about the business impact analysis, where we have identified the various parameter. So what we need to do is we need to test it, like what we do for the product marketing. We test in the market, right? We evaluate the position of the product, acceptance. The same way we need to test our plan also. And then we need to monitor and see whether that testing is successful as per our plan or not. And then we need to give the feedback, we need to communicate, and then again we need to work on our basic SOP, that these are the changes which are required, these are the modifications which we need to do, right? Further, moving ahead on these development process, what is the roadmap for it? Number one, connecting with the process what we have talked about, we need to have those program in place and the policies. Then we need to provide the training, that means the team who are going to work on it, because we have defined the responsibility, we have made the impact analysis, risk assessment, then create the strategies, see and make the plan for every alternate strategy, because one plan may be applicable in one scenario, in one situation, but may not be on other. So what you need to do, what we need to do as a person, as an organization, we need to be ready with the alternate plans. And then we need to test every plan, because what impact that situation is going to make, we don't know. So we need to be prepared for it. And for that, we need to do the internal audit or review, and review the program, give the feedback, and make the necessary changes. And so that makes it a continuous improvement which is required. It is not something which is once fixed is always applicable for every situation, because we cannot underestimate the uncertainty which comes with their own new challenges. So we need to continuously improve, we need to continuously review or process our activity. Now, to summing these roadmaps, these processes, we have international BCM standard ISO 22301, which has talked about the various steps which need to be performed, and they have come up with the 14 steps. From identifying the purpose, scope, and the users, or the reference document preparation, assuming certain assumptions, defining role and responsibility, and identifying the key context, till the identifying the disaster recovery plan, required resources, and how to restore and resume activities from temporary measurements. So they have beautifully classified those 14 pointers, which we can incorporate in understanding these various process through which we can implement continuity planning. Right? So what we can say that it is not just BCM, business continuity management planning, but it is business continuity management planning system, because it is a continuous cycle: plan, do, check, act. PDC, we are aware of this concept, we implement this the same way. Business continuity planning is also a cycle which keeps on improving themselves and its process, its activity, for the overall development, for overall better sustainability, better recovery from those disruptions, those process, those action which impacts our business. Maybe on a smaller scale, maybe at a larger scale, maybe in a small in size, maybe in the large in size, right? So we need to do that. Now, let's quickly talk about this few best practice. Number one, what we can do using these steps, processes, and other action. Implement a full BCM life cycle. Do not stop in between. Involve every component, every member. So complete that cycle. Don't stop maybe after testing, not doing the review, not doing the internal audit. That is not going to fulfill the purpose. It will break down somewhere. So complete that particular cycle. The second best practice, what we can do is build a culture all across the interested party, which means make every stakeholders aware of your plan, aware of your action, aware of the mechanism, how you're going to handle those situations and how to overcome those situations. So build that culture, build that involvement of every member from top to the bottom, from the white collar employee to the blue collar employees, to the stakeholders internally or externally, and also get the confidence of your government. Further, the third best practice what we can do is build a culture via training and awareness, because we have a different level of people who are working on the different level. They have a different tasks, so they need to be trained, they need to be equipped with the necessary skills, provide them training, make them aware of the situation and how to act in that particular situation, how to act in a critical situation of maybe earthquake, maybe a flood, maybe a cyber attack, maybe energy crisis, or a number of reasons. So give the training and aware them. Then last best practice from my side, I would suggest ensure review, maintenance, and improvement. If we are improving, we are getting to a situation where we can reduce the impact. We will ensure ourselves that we are doing the right thing. We are going to be impacted with the minimum disruptions. So we will be looking the less constraint in our process, our mechanism, right? So we should have a process to review, to identify and monitor and control it, and then improving continuously. So there is a permanent change in the mindset of the every stakeholders, every person, not just one who been responsible for that, but everyone who has connected directly or indirectly. Now we will talk about the business continuity and business resilience, how they are brought into one umbrella, how we are looking forward, moving way ahead with the business resilience in connection with the business continuity, and what are the specific scenarios for the various companies which we have seen, which we have observed, which we have studied, what good they have done, what they are not able to do it, and how, in what situation they end up. Let's talk on this dimension with my co-professor, Dr. Harshita Singh. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sunil, for so explicitly explaining us the what part of BCM. Now, when we are saying that business continuity is giving us the business resilience, we need to understand why this organizational ability to overcome the unexpected business disruption is so important and relevant these days. As the German statistician Emil rightfully quotes, it is impossible that the improbable will never happen. And that is the reason why we need to prepare for that improbable that might become probable in the coming future. But before I share with you some real life insights, let me quote a PricewaterhouseCoopers survey done recently to give you more insights into the relevance of business resilience. So, as a recent study being done by PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2023, which is popularly known as the Global Resilience Survey, which is done on around 1,800 business leaders, it has been found that 96% of the organizations have experienced some kind of business disruption in the past 2 years. And then 76% of the executives agree that their most serious disruption had a medium to a high impact on their operations. The low is not there in the picture. If you're hit by the disruption, it is going to hit you hard. The impact will be either medium or hard. Adding on to these figures, around 70% of the respondents said that they're confident about their organization's ability to respond to these disruptions. Yet, many of the organizations lack foundational elements of the resilience that they need to be successful. Particularly for my startup friends who are sitting here and listening to me right now, 40 to 60% of the small businesses never reopen their doors after a major disaster. So if you're not prepared with a BCMP in place, you are going to be getting out of the business. That is the impact of business disruption. And I think this is not something new. We have seen it right from the economic crisis that followed the crash of Lehman Brothers, or be it the British Petroleum's Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion that happened. And because of this particular incident, British Petroleum had to pay several fines and was under severe government surveillance for 4 years. You can understand the consequence of it that the British Petroleum had to bear. That is the impact of a business disruption, which can come from any direction. It can be anything that can happen. So, how do you be prepared for it? And why do you need to be prepared for it? So, the why part is, in management, we talk about three things: insight, insight, and foresight. So, hindsight is your ability to reflect and learn from the past. So, as human beings or even as organizations, we all have that ability. We learn by doing, we learn from our mistakes, and we continue doing our business. Then there is insight, your ability to interpret and respond to a particular situation in a particular period of time. And I think we are very proactive enough to do that also. We try to bring in new insights into our business. But then there is the future that we call as the foresight, your ability to predict and prepare for the future. And I think this is the most important capability that organizations need right now. If you have that ability to predict and prepare for the future, you are ready. You're ready to be in the market and survive the chaotic competition. That is the reason why concepts like business agility, organizational resilience, and analytics are coming into picture, because they're giving us a flavor of what is going to happen in the future. So that is the reason why BCMP is so important. Not only this, it is because of having the right BCMP in place that reduces your operational downtime. I'll explain how. It helps you comply with regulatory requirements. So if particularly if you are into the aviation industry or telecommunication industry or any such industry where business disruption is just not okay, so you'll have to be compliant with the business, regulatory requirements, and you need to have a BCMP in place. Besides that, it also benefits you from insurance savings. So many insurance organizations these days offer you an option of paying less premium if you have a BCMP in place. And let me tell you how organizations have successfully done it over the period of time. So 2016 case, Kenty Technology, a IT service provider located in North Carolina. One fine day, when the business was running smooth, lightning struck their office and their entire hardware melted. The office became unusable for 3 months. Had it been a normal organization, they would have gone out of the business because they were not a very big organization, they were a small organization. But because Canty Technologies were prudent enough, they had a BCP in plan, they were able to relocate their client servers to a remote data center, and their business continued smoothly. Another example, let me tell you, Gale, a marketing firm located in Texas. So Hurricane Harvey hit hard. Their office was submerged in water and they were not able to come to the office. The entire staff was not able to come to the office for 2 months. But never during that duration of 2 months, their business was disrupted. Why? Because they had a BCP in place. Another example, a very famous example of why BCP is so relevant these days, Irish Health Service Executive. So this is a very recent case, 2021 case. Irish Health Service Executive was attacked by Conti ransomware. What happened was their data was encrypted. The entire data was encrypted by Russian hackers. And what was the consequence? Their payroll system for more than 1 lakh employees came to a halt. Not only that, their COVID vaccine portal, which was there to track the COVID vaccination status, went offline. More than 80,000 computers had to be shut down across Ireland. So that was the impact of not having a BCP in place. And they were able to go back to their normal operations only after 3 months, and that too when the hacker himself posted the decryption key online. And after this incident, Irish government hired PricewaterhouseCoopers to prepare a post-incident recovery report for them. And the number one reason that PricewaterhouseCoopers quoted as the reason for Irish HCE's failure was lack of a BCP in place. That is the impact of having BCP in place. I think another very important example is Nestle. Throughout the COVID pandemic, we were never out of our supply of Maggie or any other Nestle product. How they have been able to do that? Because of using that BCP plan for their supply chains. That's how beautifully Nestle has managed the pandemic and our supply of the products. Now, another example, DJ Motors. Consider one fine day in a chauffeur-driven car, you are going to your office and you receive a call from your senior. Sir, it's not possible for you to come to the office today. We have a main water burst that has happened. Exactly the situation which happened in the case of DJ Motors. It's a well-known car vendor situated in Australia, and they have different locations wherein their offices are. But the main location wherein their entire communication system is located, they faced a situation there that the main water pipe which was going underground from near their office busted, throwing around 2 to 3 megaliters of water into their office. As a result, their office was permanently shut. So their entire communication center was shut down. But thankfully, they had a third party, Intuit Technologies, to help them sail through this. And they were able to manage their business for different sites using the backup which they had because of this BCP. But if they would have been more prudent and they had been having the BCP in place right before, than hiring the third party, it would have been a better management of the solution. So these are some of the benefits that you have when you think from the organizational resilience point of view, when you think from the business continuity point of the view. What are the other intangible benefits that you get? So these are some of the intangible benefits that you have. It boosts brand trust. It strengthens your stakeholder confidence. And an appropriate example of this would be Bengaluru International Airport. So as VP of International Enterprise Resilience, Devaya Singh says and quotes in this particular case, he says that we were actually, when we were starting our operations, we were different from any other airport which was there in India. We were the first Indian airport to be built on public-private partnership. So, unlike any other airport wherein we have the support of the government agencies funding us, we had no support and we needed to prove ourselves. Because if we want to attract clients, we need to have a proper plan in place. And one of the very first things and the initiative that the Bengaluru airport took was to get these certifications. One of them was this ISO certification for BCMP. Why was it relevant? Why was it important? Because once they got this certification, it automatically boosted their stakeholder confidence in them. In aviation industry, it's very important that your stakeholders have a confidence in the smooth running of your business. And that's what they got when they had a BCP and the ISO certification for that in place. Another example, Vodafone UK. So they are well compliant with the international standards for BCM, and they were actually doing it. But then when ISO came up with the new standards in 2019, Vodafone invested heavily just to upgrade themselves from the earlier certification to a newer certification. You know why? Not because it was only about the prudent risk management, but also because it was about strengthening stakeholder confidence. It was about boosting brand trust. So that is the power of BCMP, my friends. It helps you enhance risk management. It ensures operational resilience. It protects your business assets, and it also provides you cost benefits. So what kind of cost benefit does a BCM plan can have for you? So let me share with you a hypothetical example. Consider that a spear phishing attack attacks your organization, which is very common these days. It can happen with anyone. And we are so reliant on IT that if a phishing attack happens, an employee clicks on a malicious email and the virus corrupts the network files and it encrypts the entire data, your data become inaccessible to your employees and you. So how are you going to run the business in that particular case? In this case, several complications can arise. Hackers can request ransom fee from you. The full recovery without paying ransom fee is impossible. And because your backup solutions are limited, you might lose thousands of dollars. What do we do in that particular case? So any organization, a normal organization, has three options that they can choose from. One, they pay the CryptoLocker ransom fee, which I am expecting would be in several thousands of dollars. But in that particular case also, there is no guarantee that the hacker will not attack you again. And there is also no guarantee that you'll get your full data back. What is the other option that you have? You do a basic recovery after the ransomware attack with standard backup tools. But in that particular case, the average recovery time after the incident, the disruption hits you, and then you are planning for backup, the entire time for the recovery is going to be somewhere around 24 business hours or maybe more than that. So if your recovery time is 24 hours or more than that, you can understand how much business you are going to lose in those 24 hours. And the cost of recovery is also going to be very high because of the last minute updations that you're going to do. Third option that you can have is to have a BCP for managing disaster recovery. So your average recovery time will be 3 business hours, let's say, or maybe less, or maybe 1 or 2 or more. And your average cost of recovery will be much, much less than the other two options. So this is the kind of cost benefit also that the BCP gives you. And that is why it is so relevant these days, and businesses are investing heavily in having a BCP in place. But moving on to the how part of it. So many of my students ask me, ma'am, one fine day, let's say if my boss asks me that let's focus on BCMP, or I make up my mind as a small business that I want to have a BCP in place, where do I start? What should I do? So I always tell them that make a list of all those possible disruptions that can happen in your business. It can be a natural disruption, it can be a technological disruption, it can be a human caused disruption, or it can be process oriented disruption. And there are huge possibilities of any of this disruption popping up any time when everything was going fine and you're thinking you are making good business. So what do? You ask yourself 6 important questions. Do you need a BCP? So in cases of these disasters that I discussed, you need to introspect, you need to ask these questions. And believe me, my friend, if answer to any one of these questions, even one of these questions is yes, you definitely need a BCP in place, which I'm sure will be the case with 99% of the organizations of people sitting here. So you definitely need a BCP. How you go about BCP? So you have several, international protocols and standards available for that. I will not go into the detail because one session is just not enough to talk about this topic. But then just to give you an idea, how does a disaster management or an impact analysis sheet looks like? Why? Because according to the Gartner, 70% of the organization who make up their mind that yes, they need a BCP in place, they don't have a business impact analysis plan in place. So how does a business impact analysis plan looks like? The very first thing you ask yourself is what are your essential functions? What are the inputs of those functions? What are the outputs? And then automatically you introspect, you ask yourself several important questions that give you an idea about your essential and non-essential functions. So you differentiate and you segregate your essential and the non-essential functions, and you focus specifically on your essential functions. That is how you start about it, you go about it. And then there is a lot of science going behind it, particularly for my HR people, the business heads who are sitting here. It's also about selecting a right team. As Dr. Sunil rightly mentioned, it is about training your employees, it is about embracing the right culture, it is about selecting the right team. So herein the role of selecting the right team comes in. These days we've been talking too much about tiger teams, a term being given by NASA during their Apollo 13 mission to classify a group of highly specialized engineers. And now these days, we are using it everywhere in the management to talk about those teams that are specific and that can bring us the desired result. So you need to have a tiger team in place. Not only this, you need to have your employees assigned as risk champions. And when you assign your employees as risk champions, not everyone can be a risk champion. So your employees, imagine a situation wherein your one of your employee who's there on the risk management team is a risk averse individual or is a poor stress handler. Will he be able to give you the desired result? No. The chances are very high that your entire planning will fail. So it's about carefully understanding which individual will be a better team player in case of risk management, in case of a BCM implementation. So that's where the HR part comes in, or your psychological, the human relations part comes in. Apart from that, if I discuss with you some of the initiatives being taken by the organization, you have no idea, my friends, to what extent have the organization gone into this. They have come up with the concept of gamification, and these are all real life examples I'm talking about. Organizations are also using tabletop exercises to prepare their employees for the business disruptions that might happen. Some organizations have also come up with their mobile apps to train their employees on how to prevent cyber attacks with several quizzes and certain scenarios that have been prepared. So there is a lot of science going behind BCMP, and there is a lot of logic going behind it that you need to understand, that you need to, implement when you have a BCM plan in place and you have made up your mind that you want to do it in your organization. So with this, I'll end my presentation today, and I'll end it with a quote from Warren Buffett. It's only when the tide goes down that you discover who's been swimming naked. So let's not swim naked. Let's be prepared for what is coming, because improbable might become probable in the near future. Thank you. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harshita. Thank you, Dr. Sunil. Really, it was an informative session. Ladies and gentlemen, we are waiting for your question to be dropped in the section of Q&A, and all the questions will be taken to be answered.
Thank you, Dua. As I can see in the chat box, there's one question being posted by one of the audience. Can I answer it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So one of the question being asked is, what is the difference between continuity and risk management? So I would say that when you are asking me about this question, keep three things in mind. One is organizational resilience, then is the risk management, and then there is business continuity. So I will say organizational resilience is an organization's ability to respond to business disruptions. And of course, it is an umbrella term under which risk management and BCMP will come. Risk management is something when you're trying to monitor and mitigate the risk that might come your way. Whereas BCMP is a process. So one is a ability, other is a process. That is the difference between business continuity and risk management. And of course, they all fall under the umbrella term of organizational resilience.
So, in addition to what Dr. Hasita Singh said, uh, when we're talking about the business continuity or the risk management or disaster management, so it's more about being a proactive. So, when we talk about the business continuity, we are acting proactively, making ourselves prepared, ready for those situations, for those scenarios where we can handle any disruption with a minimum impact rather than acting after we face that particular situation and we start planning and executing, because that in between we are losing a lot of time. In between we can lose a lot of business, which we as an organization in this particular era, in this particular century, we cannot afford. So in continuity, let's make ourselves prepared, let's make ourselves ready for handling those situations, for those scenarios, and come up with the respective plan. And so when we talk about and moving ahead with the larger picture, as ma'am said, one umbrella. So when we talk about the business continuity planning, we are also incorporating the concepts of risk management, we are including the concept of the disaster management, and so on. A lot many individual parameters we are able to come and bring together at one umbrella under one objective, and that helps for the long term running and sustainability of the processes.
This is a question wherein the attendee is asking how to evaluate properly the critical processes or services for a small organization. So, like I shared with you the checklist, this is actually a checklist being issued by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency of USA. And I think this is a good starting point that any business or any organization can use to ask themselves what are their essential functions, what are those functions which are without which your business cannot run. So obviously let's say just to give you a common example, if you have an organization wherein you have some departments that are more into directly into the business, so your operations department, your product development team, so they will become your essential functions. Obviously support functions are there, so a canteen which is there or any other such facility which is there to support your employees will automatically become a non-essential function. So that is how you need to evaluate. I would say refer to that checklist. It's a very good starting point for any business that has been released by FEMA for your help. You can use it to introspect, to first understand and identify whether you need a plan in place or not. And then once you have identified that, then you go on about identifying your essential functions. So one another important step is discussing with your employees as to what they think is essential for their business. It's not just about understanding your business, it is also about understanding your suppliers. So you also try to consolidate or minimize your suppliers in case of a disruption. You rely on a few dependable suppliers. So that also becomes the part of your business continuity management plan.
Adding to the second question, when there's a question which talks about no support from top in the organization, which is the biggest challenge, that it includes BCM, BIA, and collaboration. Now, if you relate to what I started with, the common sense. So common sense, which is not common, and again the need of a structured common sense, because we were working earlier without even knowing the fact. We were working on implementing the strategies to continue to handle those difficult scenarios. But when we have seen the recent times, especially the pandemics, and especially the disasters, we have understood, we have realized that yes, we need to focus on those things which we have thought of a very common thing, very common parameter. But that is not just common. We need to implement in a structured form. So now many, even almost every organization are looking ahead, looking forward. Slowly they are making their strategies and developing these processes. They're bringing these changes in their system to bring this business continuity plan in place so that they can recover well. And they're bringing those strategies, those collaboration and improving, and they're training their people. Now the training which happening in understanding these dimensions is again one of the very first step which is happening to enrich their people, to enrich their stakeholder. Remember the best practice what we talked about: incorporate, collaborate, every member train themselves based on their role and responsibility. So now the organization has already started training their people for these situations.
I think one more question is there. Can you please help us with the best practices in business continuity plans, especially in government? So, in this particular case, I will definitely quote the example of the Irish HCE, which is there that I've discussed during the presentation. So, in this particular case, after the report of the PricewaterhouseCooper, Irish government actually realized the importance of BCP in place, and that is how more and more organizations, both government as well as non-government, are now thinking about using these best practices, you having a BCP in place. In fact, organizations are these days have gone to the extent of using DRAS, disaster relief as a service, and BAS, backup as a service. So organizations, the third parties are there to provide it, and the organizations which are there in the business are using these services just to stay ahead in the business in case a business disruption happens. And in terms of the business practices, like I shared the example of Kenti Technologies with you, I shared the example of Nestle with you. These are actually the best practices which are there, uh, particularly to tell us about the importance of having BCP in place.
Okay, so when we are trying to connect with the BI, business impact analysis and the risk management, again we need to how they're connected, they're closely connected with each other. What when we are doing talking about the risk management, we are trying to identify all the possible and potential risk which is going to impact, which is going to hamper us, which is going to influence our process, our operation, our business. So we need to identify all the possible risks. Like ma'am shown you a chart where we talked about the categorization. Is it a natural, is it technological, is it a people driven? So what kind of risk, in which category of risk it is, and then what are the possible influence these risks will make in my business, what kind of impact. So is it going to disrupt my whole operation, or just a part of operation, or just a part of maybe for an hour, or maybe for maybe few seconds, or maybe for an day. So we need to analyze based on our experience, based on our expertise, based on the training what we take, or what we talked about, testing our plan. So when we test, like test marketing for the product we do, similarly we test it all, and from there also we also able to evaluate and illustrate that what level of impact it will make. So we will identify all those risks, and then we will identify what level of impact it is making in my business, and accordingly I will make my strategies. And not only one strategy for one particular scenario, we need to have the alternates also. Why? Because one strategy may be applicable for one scenario, may not be applicable for another scenario. Because maybe something which is applicable for a scenario of flood may not be applicable for a scenario of cyber attack. So we need to have that alternate strategies through which we can act proactively, and we can minimize, we can respond to those queries, those situations, those scenarios. Yes, someone said a common sense for top management, right? So see, this is something which is not just for the sake of doing, but this is for the growth, this is for the sustainability, this is for the development, this is for the improvement. And so we are taking, every organization is taking, every individual is taking it seriously, because we have seen that scenarios, we have seen that position, we have been in that position where we need to implement this, where we need to be acting more proactively, and to look at the different scenarios. And if we want to grow, if we want to sustain, we have to. And so this is now becoming a structured common sense. Now it is because we are looking for a common goal. Yes, we are looking for those figures. That is what the profit, that is what the business is. Because we are looking for the continuation of my business, we're looking for the functionality, we're looking for achieving a target, achieving a scope, achieving an objective. And yes, when we achieve our goal, we will achieve our objective, we will achieve that figure also. And to continue achieving that figure, we need to be having that business continuity management planning in place.
So in case we have no more questions, I think, though, ma'am,
Yes, okay. So I do believe we answered all the questions that has been
can we
written.
just end the session in case we have no more
Yeah.
questions?
For the time being, I do believe you answered all the questions, Dr. Sonel, Dr. Harshita. Thank you so much for being with us today and for giving us your time. For the who want to get in touch with Dr. Sunil or Dr. Harshita, please communicate to us directly, and we will forward your question to them. We have upcoming series webinars with in a collaboration with Amity University Online for the upcoming months. Who would love to be attending these webinars, please register with us. Thank you so much for your time. And we would love to close the webinar right now. Also, I would love to pay attention, the audience, that there is a live stream running on the YouTube channel of Dubai Quality Group. I just shared the link on the chat area. So if you want to watch this session again, you can go directly to the link of our channels. Thank you so much, everyone here, and let's see you soon, inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.